Keith Jeffery was born in the mid-1960s at the Eastern General Hospital. He talks about growing up in Portobello, his interest in music and records, about going uptown to music venues, about not being a student but being able to get into student unions with a bus pass. But this episode is mainly about Keith's interest in CB, citizen band radio. The CB phenomenon came from the US in the late 1970s, very much inspired by the song and film Convoy. Keith runs us through the technology of the time, the terms used when talking over the radio, and just how far a signal could reach in the right conditions. It's a real insight into a hugely popular pastime from the 1970s through to the 1980s. Keith Jeffery, who's coming in to talk eventually we'll talk about CB radio, won't we, Keith?
We will, yes.
But first of all, we'll talk a little bit about where you were born and brought up. Are you an Edinburgh man, Keith?
Well, I've found out I'm a Leither. I was born in the Eastern General, and it does say Leith on my birth certificate.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm very happy.
Well, we're even more delighted to have you in this Leith studio. And where were you living? Where were you?
I was brought up in Portobello.
Ah, right, okay. So what school did you go to?
Went to Towerbank Primary and Portobello High School.
Did you enjoy school?
I did, yes, I did.
Any particular subjects you were really
I
good
liked
at?
art and PE.
Oh, right, that's an unusual combination. Very good. And we're going to talk about, obviously, I've said that your interest in radio and CB radio in particular. But before we go to there, I always like to ask people about early records or music they remember. Did you listen to the radio as a kid?
I did, yes. My mum and dad were great rock and rollers, so I was brought up with the music.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And the first record I remember buying was Ballpark Incident by Wizard.
Oh, that's something a bit different.
And also Blackfoot Sue, Sing Don't Speak.
I don't even think I remember that one.
The record label was a Jam Jar.
Right, okay.
On the 7-inch single.
Wow. And where would you buy your records?
There was a record shop in Portobello called Allen's Record Shop. They're there. And also the top of Leith Walk. Was it Band Parts it was called?
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah, I think that was there for years.
So that was the two main places.
Right. And would you listen to the charts every week?
Yes, we would, yeah. Tuesday, wasn't it, if I remember right? Tuesday about 12 to 1, I think. And then they played that was the to get to the number one spot.
Right.
Then they done the Sunday as well. They used to do them 6 till 7 on a Sunday because we used to listen to them in the janitor's sort of room at Towerbank Annex. They would have the radio on during the week, so it was our dinner time. They would the Janny would have it on.
So the Janny
so we could hear the charts countdown.
Oh, for goodness sake! So he was into his music by the sound.
It was a she.
She?
It was
a very good.
That was at the Annex in Bath Street.
Right. Okay.
That was the sort of last year in primary. We were moved to the Annex, just 2 classes.
That's brilliant. Because I remember, certainly as you said on Sundays, I remember listening to it. That was the kind of last good act before school on Monday.
Yeah,
and often being in the bath listening to the top 40 on a Sunday, it was great excitement, wasn't it?
It was tremendous excitement. It really was. And people were excited to get to Top of the Pops on the Thursday.
That's right. Yeah. There was that. You're absolutely. I mean, we assume that sort of thing doesn't go on now. I suppose there is still the charts, but not quite the same.
Yeah.
Mum and Dad were great dancers, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, rock and roll. They done the jiving. They came 6th in the British Championships, and they were East of Scotland champions.
Some achievement.
It was, yeah. And they had to go all the way down to London to do the British Championships. Were
they still dancing when you were growing up then?
Oh yes, any family function they were always up on the floor. And there is a picture of one of the old Sunday posts just after their wedding with a picture of Mum and Dad in their wedding outfits, and she's away up in there in her wedding dress with my dad lifting her in one of the rock and roll throws. Yeah,
I believe we've got that in our archive. That's so did they encourage you to dance or?
Well, I was always shy at that time, you know.
Yeah.
They used to say, "Come on up on the floor," but I was always shy boy.
Oh, what a shame. So you weren't going out to discos and that kind of...
Well, the odd one or two at the youth, the church, the boys' brigade. I don't know. There would be the odd dance there, but not really.
No. And we talked a little bit about you. Obviously, this conversation is going to be about CB radio and radio generally. What other things were you listening to on the radio as you were growing up, apart from the charts?
Apart from the charts,
Yeah.
well, you would get the kids' programmes in the morning. You know?
Right.
And there was topical programmes as well at the time, like the news programmes.
Right, yeah.
I think Jeremy Vine does something like it now, but it was some of it was way over your head when you were young.
Jimmy Young, wasn't it?
Jimmy Young, yes, aye.
I remember him.
He was the original one that done that show,
Yeah.
so it would be the Jimmy Young show.
Do you remember he used to always have catchphrases, Jimmy Young, and there was TTFN and
Ta-ta for now.
That's right, yeah. And there was what was it? He used to do recipes, didn't he? Do you remember that?
He did do recipes, yes. I don't think my mother she used to make up her own recipes.
I remember it was Raymondo. What's the recipe today, Raymondo? And it was just, but it was, classic stuff. And of course, you started off as a singer. Now, you mentioned that your granny had records and.
She had the old radio cabinet, walnut style, with the deck on top, the big speakers built in at the side, and the radio dial right underneath the deck, with the old 78s inside.
Oh wow!
I think Al Martino was in there.
Classic. So the 50s kind of 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Telling me you like T-Rex as well?
Oh yeah, great T-Rex fan. Down in Blackpool, I was very young and got a T-Rex scarf.
Right.
And badges, and of course onto the roller coaster. Scarf gets blown away. Young boy wanting his scarf back.
Oh,
Just about
no.
a tear strip. They managed to get it because it blew to the back of the roller coaster.
Oh, for goodness sake. And also, we were talking about jukeboxes as well, which was a great thing to get along.
Oh, yeah, and the pubs and the Students' Union. My mate was a member of the Students' Union. He used to have his wee card he could show to get in. Of course, I wasn't a student, but I had a bus pass. They didn't really look at your card, so I could just flash the bus pass and get into the Students' Union, into the jukebox. I think it was about 5 records for £1 at the time. Just to get our money's worth, we would play all the long songs, about 30 minutes long, like Freebird and Leonard Skinner, Stairway to Heaven, Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf.
I wonder if they got fed up with you in your long
you can see
tracks.
people turning around looking. Who's done that?
So we're primarily going to talk about CB radio, which of course, when did you start getting into Citizen Band?
Citizen Band radio, about 1978, 79.
Right.
The British scene of CB radio started in the late 70s.
Right, yeah.
And then it was legalised in 81.
Did that make it slightly less exciting being legalised?
It did, yeah, it did.
So how did you get into it then?
Probably through the film, and then you saw the truckers first and foremost driving along the road, and they would have this mic in their hand and the big, what we used to cry the twig, which was the aerial on their roof, And I think one time in one of the lay-bys within the truck stops within the Portobello area, I heard the chap talking on the CB radio, and then him coming back. Also, I always used to like listening to the old shortwave on the wee radio sets.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very similar. You could hear foreign countries and try and tune in.
Yeah.
And it's similar on CB. You try and tune into faraway lands.
Now, bearing in mind when you started doing it, it was illegal. Where were you getting the sets from?
Oh, there was a big shop up the old meat market in Ponton Street. Opposite Ponton Street. It's Fountainbridge.
Yeah.
That used to be a big CB shop.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think there was one in Leith Walk as well. But this before it was Fat Sam's.
Yes.
Remember, it was the old
Yeah.
It was the old meat market years ago.
Yeah.
It was a CB shop.
Oh, for goodness sake, I didn't. So, I mean, were they expensive? Did you save up?
Yes, you saved up for them. Yeah. So probably I would say about 1979 by the time I got my my first set, and I passed my test, my driving test in 1979.
Oh, right, okay.
And then you could put it into the car.
Of course, yeah.
That's where it all started.
Well, was there a kind of, obviously, groups of people that were involved in it? So
yeah, people in the local area, and then you would all meet up. And then if you would talk to people right from the bottom of the Portobello prom, you could first and foremost talk to people in Fife.
Of course.
And then you would go and meet them, and that was called an eyeball.
Right.
You used to eyeball, and you would go across to Fife and meet them, and it was
brilliant. Great.
It was really good, great times.
And it's all the terminology in it as well, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. We had to learn all that. The phonetic alphabet, we had to learn that as well.
Sake.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a case of getting the would you call it? Is it a rig? You call it? No.
They did at that time, but also they called the trucks rigs as well.
Of course, yeah.
But they did call the CB sets rigs as well.
So you'd have to. Were you taught by somebody all the way to use them, or
no? There was. I think probably the chaps that first had it, and they'd maybe been on it for 6 months to a year, sort of thing. And you would just listen in with them and watch them, and then just pick it up as you go along. As you say, when we first started, it was illegal, and to make it legal, we used to do rallies and meets and places like that. We actually met at Knock Hill.
Wow.
And had a convoy from Knock Hill all the way into Edinburgh city centre. And going across the Forth Road Bridge, we were actually 2 lanes, so everybody behind us was waiting. We held them all up. And they come from all over the country, because it was it was advertised over the air. We used to have the smaller twigs on the cars and vehicles and such like. But this chap used to have what they call a home base aerial. He drilled a hole into the top of his Mini and put one of the big silver rods on his Mini. Going over.
The aerial would be bigger than the car, wouldn't it?
It was. Well, they were 14 feet high.
My God. And I mean, you say that convoy. There must have been police with you then.
Yeah, well, that's right. They'd be at the front, and of course taking up the back as well.
Yeah. And were they fine?
They were fine at that time. It's 79, 1980.
Right.
They used to say that the signal from CBs interfered with the services.
Yeah.
But we had a policeman that was a member, and he used to sit at the bottom of the street with the police car and our car right beside it, with his radio on and us talking on the radio. No interference whatsoever. I think it was a government ploy. Just not to speak to the rest of the world.
And you say, it was illegal. Were you, when you were using your CB radio when it was illegal, did people ever pick you up, or did did somebody suddenly arrive and say stop that, or?
No, we never really, I think at that time there was many things more serious to bother about.
Yeah.
We weren't doing anybody any harm.
No.
And we found that it wasn't causing any interference as such.
No.
Maybe if you had one on your roof and you were at home with it, the neighbour next door would maybe get lines going across her television set.
Oh, is that right?
Sometimes they would hear your voices. But then you could make yourself a dummy load, and that would check your signal strength and such like, and you could put the dampener on the back of your set to try and cut down the interference.
Right. It's all these technical words you see, damper and very good. And did you move on and get more powerful?
We did, yeah. We got used to get bigger sets, because as it got more and more popular, some of what we used to cry the Bampots or the Muppets, they used to come on and just swear and abuse, and it was no good then. So the bigger sets, you could, from 40 channels, you could get 80 channels. Wow. And then if they were giving you bother, flick the switch, you'd disappear, and they'd wonder where you went until they discovered that, Yeah. And then you would get the big sideband radios, which then could move just off frequency a couple of notches.
Oh, right.
And you'd have to tune in very finely. And but that was when you could speak to the rest of the world on the sideband.
So you could actually speak to someone. What?
Yes.
How far were you able to?
I've spoken to all over the world. From the house, I finally put up a big aerial in the house.
Good.
They used to have what you would call the 11-year cycle, when the atmospherics, every 11 years you would get what we cried skip.
Right.
It was good atmospherics, so your signal went up to the ionosphere and would come down, and if the skip was there, it could come down anywhere. So it could go up, hit the ionosphere, and it could end up at another part. And And we used to send QSL cards to the people that you spoke to. And
Now, say what a QSL card is.
It's a card that you would fill in with your set, what set you had, how the weather was, what their signal strength was to you, what their audio sounded like, and just general information. Get their information and send it to them, and they would send it back to you. Oh. And you could collect everybody's QSL cards.
Right.
And they could have yours.
So when you say all over the world, tell me some of the places that you were able to reach.
Well, the Americas,
Really?
South and North, South Africa,
Great.
all over Europe. And the ultimate time, the story is, and I never heard it for myself, but one chap sent out his call sign, and so minutes later, he heard his own call sign coming back. So that's obviously went up to the skip and went right round, and
Oh my God!
he's heard himself shouting.
Oh, that's totally bizarre, isn't it? Oh, I hope that's true. That's just
Yeah, as far as I know, it is.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think the chap would tell fibs.
And would you, when you were broadcasting, you said you obviously had a good aerial at the house.
Yes.
But before that, were you going to the top of hills and
Yes,
stuff?
yeah, we go way up to the hills and the borders. We actually, but Lord Rosebery's land.
Oh, yes.
One of the farmers there that used to tend the hills and such, like, he was down in the valley where he stayed.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get great television, so the signal was poor. So
Yeah.
our radio club guys put a repeater up at the top of the hill for him.
Oh, very good.
And beamed it down and managed to get a good signal. So they let us alone off the Land Rover, and we could drive all over the land and
brilliant.
way up. One story one time was when we were up there with the aerial, we could set up, it's a quad aerial, has many beams on it that you
Right.
can physically turn to point away from the busy areas back like the town. And it would directional aerial would send your signal more prominently. And when we were up there, we would take the wee stove and have your breakfast in the morning. Now, when we got up in the morning, the jets were doing the low flying. And, of course, they were that low, we were frightened in case they hit the aerial. And we could see the pilot waving to us as he passed by.
So it's quite an adventure, actually.
Great adventures.
Yeah.
Great. And of course, when you're driving up that hill to get to the top, you've got a bit of the hill on your left, and of course you're looking over, and it's just a steep drop all the way down into the valley. 4-wheel drive's fine on that, but
But not a Mini, obviously.
not a Mini.
I mean, obviously now, I would presume the internet's rather kind of...
Yeah, it's more or less taken over now. I've not been on the CB or that for a long time. I've still got a receiver that I could
Have
tune
you?
into and listen
Yeah.
every now and again. But it was one stormy night at home, I heard a crash on the roof.
Oh,
I
right.
thought, the storm's done the aerial in.
Yeah.
But when I got up in the morning, it disappeared. Somebody had come up from this next again stair through the hatch, cut it with a bolt cutter and stole it. And of course, that just sickened me.
No.
Yeah.
My
Took
God.
the aerial. And believe it or not, when I was putting that aerial up,
Yeah.
I was on the top of a 40-foot building on top of a chimney stack. Me and my dad trying to bolt it together. The poles are stuck at the traffic lights below. 3 of them in the car with their heads hanging out the window, looking up at us, going, "What on earth are they doing?"
Oh, this fella sneaked up and just...
And this fella he sneaked up through the hatch and the next again stair and cut it down. I thought it was part of the storm. I thought, how did they get up there in a storm? It's stupid. But it was a good aerial, and they've obviously clocked it.
Right. I mean, it must have been quite an expensive hobby.
Yes, it was. Your set, at the time, your sets could cost anywhere between 40 and 100 odd pounds.
Right.
But back in those days, that
Yeah.
was a fair bit of money.
Yeah, so we're saving up.
So saved up, yeah.
And then the aerials, obviously.
And the aerials, yes, they could be just as dear.
You were telling me about an eyeball meeting you had. So this is where you physically met.
Yes, well, you talk to people over the radio, and then you decide to have eyeball. They used to cry it, and then we decided to have the local pub. We started a small CB club in there as well, and lots of people turned up, and the locals got a bit miffed because we would be taking their seats up.
Yeah.
So one time there was a few of the locals come in, and they went into their bags and their pockets and brought out bananas. and started speaking into them like it was mics, just to try and take
the
fool or the Mickey out of
Yeah.
us. And then what happens? A brawl.
Oh no! Oh my God!
There entail a mass fight.
That's very CW McCall and
Yeah,
Convoy, isn't
yeah.
it? So, real sense of camaraderie, I would imagine.
yeah. There was. It would help people, with directions if people were lost and stuff like that. It was, it was great. They used to do what they cry fox and hound as well, where they would have a preset course that you could. Well, no, you would go out to find clues in the car, and you would be using your radios to keep in touch with each other.
Oh, right.
And you would have sheets with clues, and you'd have to go and find the buildings and write down what building was that, and come back to the checkpoint. And if you managed to get them all, you won.
Oh, very good. Was there a prize, or was it just the
there was
sheer...
wee prizes. Yeah, they
Right.
used to have wee cups or stuff like that. It was very good.
Any other stories there you got?
Oh, many stories. There was a dawn raid on a lot of our members. We progressed from just your local pub meetings to outside in farms. It was a farmhouse.
Oh,
We
right,
used to have a member, and he let us use that. So an outbuilding would meet there, and a lot of them, as I say, were on the illegal bands.
Oh, right.
They got. I think it was the telecommunications people managed to catch on a dawn raid by homing in on their signals.
My
They
God.
got their equipment taken off them, fined, and a lot of those chaps then went to do amateur ham radio.
Oh, right.
That to get that, you've got to sit a test and
Right.
get your license, and that was the aim, to do that. It was to.
Did you ever go down that way?
Well, I went to the nautical college and done the courses and stuff.
Oh, right.
But they never set the course or sat it. And
Right. So you never fancied doing the ham radio?
no, but by that time the twig was stolen off the roof.
Oh, yeah.
I was a bit, and other things, took up golfing and,
Yeah. Do you
But
think-
I always still tuned in,
Yeah.
still tuned in listening. I'd done a bit of Morse as well.
Oh, right.
You used to go to the college and buy the key, and had to learn Morse and the phonetic alphabet. A lot entailed in it.
Yeah.
Because you used to have to learn how to. What they cried a dummy load was you built from an old treacle can,
Right.
filled it with sand, and you put your aerial connections into that.
Right.
So instead of sending your signal out onto the airwaves, you would send it into this what they cried a dummy load, so as you could get your SWR readings down, single wave I'm going daft now.
It's all the terminology.
Oh, it's what you forgot more than I can remember now in the
Yeah.
terminologies,
And did you get quite good? Obviously, it's quite technical, isn't it? There's technical elements to it.
yeah.
Would you build your own
Some
stuff?
people used to build their own wee sets, but or try and enhance them,
Yeah.
and they build their own aerials and stuff like that, different frequencies or different sizes of aerials, and you see the ham operators have got, just if you look up to people's roofs, you'll see the big twigs,
Right.
or the aerials, and they'd have the 4 bars, which was the beam. They would have a rotating motor which they could then turn round.
Oh, very sophisticated.
Yeah, they could turn that round and point away from all the local Muppets in the town to whoever they wanted to speak to in foreign lands.
I was asking you there if you'd ever thought of going in, like this radio kind of.
Yeah, it's always been at the back of my mind, yeah. And 2 guys that I used to work with worked in the hospital radio
Right.
in Edinburgh. And I was up at their studios a couple of times listening in. And the story is that you've got to watch what records you play while in hospital radio.
You've got, I suppose, they've got to be uplifting, haven't they?
They have, yes. You've got to watch what some of the titles are. In case it coincides with people's illnesses.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, hopefully you might think about doing a programme here. We're always looking for people. You're listening to Thelma FM. This is the broadcasting arm of the Living Memory Association, and we are broadcasting from a small back room. It is a small back room, isn't it, Keith?
It's small but cosy and comfortable.
Thank you very much. It is referred to as the broom cupboard quite a lot of the time. Yes, so we're broadcasting from the Little Shop of Memory, which is our hands-on museum here at Ocean Terminal. Wonderful stuff we've got here. Thousands of items that are either bring back memories or will intrigue you. We also, if you want to look at what more about our work, we have a web page which will tell you a lot of the stuff we do, and that's www.livingmemory.org.uk, and we have Facebook page, Living Memory Association, or this radio station, Thelma FM, which will keep you updated. I should say our hands-on museum, we don't sell anything. Stan's always saying to remind everyone of that.
Yeah.
But you're welcome to come in and pick things up. That's so getting back, yes, to when did you kind of? Well, you obviously had your aerial stolen, so that kind of finished off. But you'd obviously kind of stopped.
I've still got the car mag mount aerial. I've still got that. I've still got some equipment, but it's in storage, shall we say?
Right. Okay.
And before the aerial on the roof, I used the mag mount on Mother's cooker, because that was a great earth. And I'm telling you, the signal that it boomed out
Really?
was fantastic. Just with a Moonraker mag mount, it was called.
Right.
Because that was what you put on your car. Of course, they gave it a good air.
Yeah.
So what's the next best thing in the house is the cooker.
She must have been quite understanding, your mum.
Yeah. Because I put a bit of felt underneath so that it wouldn't scratch the cooker or the car.
So do you fancy going back to it at all, or is it sort of thing that's passed?
I never say no.
No.
And as I say, I always like to listen in on the shortwave. Everybody CB and amateur radio has their call signs, you know.
What was yours? Well, it's not rude, is it?
Well, no, it's
Right.
not rude. It's not rude. No. Butcher to trade, eh?
Oh, but
So you had the different knives.
right, yeah.
And steak knives, cleavers, boning knives. So
Right.
I just put the boner.
Which, yeah.
You know, for the boning knife.
Of
you know,
course,
and
yeah.
That's what they were. If you go to the meat market,
Yeah.
all the guys cutting the meat, they're called...
Could be misinterpreted. So.
Some of them are called cutters, and some of them are the boners and
Right.
such like. But my mate still shouts that in the street to me. It is, you know.
You could get
and
into
of course,
trouble.
But that was the Americans' fault.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's true.
That's
yeah.
the Americans.
It wasn't general
that
terminology
changed that
here.
meaning, shall
Yeah,
we say? You know.
Yeah. That's interesting, because we maybe talk a bit about that, and then we'll go into our. So to trade, you're a butcher.
To trade, I'm a butcher. Yes.
Ah, right.
Yeah, and
How long an apprenticeship would you've had for that?
it was for 4 years apprenticeship.
Really?
Yeah, and college. I went to Telford College to do the meat course. I got diplomas, 2 diplomas, HNDs they were called, which
Yeah.
is higher national diplomas, so they're still a diploma.
Yeah.
I was never great at the school, you know,
No.
but to get 2 diplomas, it was something I was interested in.
Yeah.
And
yeah. How did you get into butcher?
Well, it was in the time you could go down to the job centre,
Yeah.
pick it off a card off a row of
Yeah.
and take it to the desk, and it was a window cleaner or a butcher. Well, I don't know if I'm very good at heights, so I went for the butcher.
And where did you start?
Started in MacSweens of Edinburgh.
Which was where particularly was the shop?
That was up in Bruntsfield. I remember one time the Radio 1 came to the shop, you know, and it was Mike Reid at the time, you know, and all the school kids from Boroughmew were outside watching this Radio Roadshow coming from a butcher's shop.
Yeah.
And of course, the boss at the time, John, he had all the wee haggis boxes round the top part of the shelves, and there was wee sort of units that you could open up and put stuff in, and he pretended with signs that the haggis were asleep and you had to be quiet or you would wake up the haggis. And Mike Reid loved this. He had the jingle at the time, and he got some of our guys in the shop to sing the jingle.
Oh,
and then they used it, years and weeks to come after
Really?
that as a radio jingle they'd recorded.
So
because they'd done the Barbers Quartet
Yes,
singing
right.
his jingle,
Yeah.
and we were the Butchers Quartet singing it.
How did it go?
It went great.
Good.
And my dad actually was listening on the radio one time at home and heard it.
Oh, so your voice was on that?
My voice was on
Oh
that.
my God! I was hoping you were going to sing a little bit of it.
Well, I think it went Mike Reid 275 and 285. Mike Reid, National Radio 1.
That's right. Yeah, very good. And that God, I would probably listening to that when I was a kid and listening to your voice.
Yeah, you would have. Yeah.
Yeah. How bizarre. Did you most of your working life as a butcher?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, and then moved out to the big haggis factory.
Right. But you know all the joints of meat and all that?
I know them all, yeah. Learned them all at college. Before butcher, I was actually a copy boy at the Evening News while I was still at school. They used to send the tubes all round the building before they could email people. They used to send it through tubes, wee bits of paper.
So you had like the glass tube, or was it just
yeah.
Like at shops, they had in the shop?
Or even like the tubes that the plumbers used. Right,
good God.
connected up, but they would be see-through ones, and you would put them in, unscrew the top, put your note in where it was going, send it up the different tubes, because there had half a dozen different ones you could put it up to. And then the copy boy would go up, and the wee plates that they used to ink to get the photographs.
Yeah.
You used to have to physically take them to the different departments.
I mean,
that was just as a school kid.
You're the same age as me, so you'll be 58. You know, this kind of technology sounds as though it's sort of like before the war, doesn't it?
I know, you think, like, people now will say, what were you doing?
Yeah.
All they do is press a couple of buttons now and they send whatever they want to people.
Yeah. And what was your wages, do you remember?
When I first started butchering, it was £21 a week, gross. Right, that was before tax.
And was it cash? It'd be cash, of course.
Yes, it was all cash in a wee pocket, a wee nice brown envelope that you could actually peel the top part so as you could count it before you opened it, just to make sure the amount was correct, so there was no shenanigans going on.
That's right. And would you give your mum a percentage on that? Or?
Yeah, I think my mother took about £5 off me or more. And then she told me to put so much away, saving up and stuff like that.
And the rest was
went to buy CBs.
That's been brilliant, Keith. Thank you very much. I hope you come back.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to our Life Story podcast. Please check out our other podcasts, Leith Lives, The Thelma Tapes, Analog Rory's Jukebox, and Forgotten Songs from the Broom Cupboard. All these can be found on popular podcast platforms such as Apple Podcast, Spotify and Deezer. Also via our website www.livingmemory.org.uk, or we have 2 Facebook pages, one for the Living Memory Association and the other for Thelma Podcasts. If you have a story or a memory you'd like recorded, please contact us via our website. Once again, thanks.